is affected by things beyond our control, for instance. And we've learned a lot, I'd say, over the last number of years, I hope, more progressive organizations have, that you cannot, no problem, like child poverty in Nova Scotia. If we were going to try and reduce that, how complex or simple do you think that might be? Is that a complicated problem or a complex problem, for instance?
It's extremely complex.
Yeah. So I'm going to leave you with a little more homework on this one as well. There's a great talk by Malcolm Gladwell, who's a Canadian author, right? And he talks, I think he's talking at the New Yorker Festival. I think he's talked at every New Yorker festival there's ever been. But he talks about the difference between mysteries and puzzles. And today we're trying to solve mysteries, not puzzles. And there's a whole different way of thinking in order to try and solve a mystery versus a puzzle. So I just encourage you to check that out. Again, YouTube. So given what we know we're trying to do in community, how can we best go about creating an organizational culture that will help us do what we need to do? What do you think? Any ideas? Yep.
Probably having a common goal and then values that everyone agrees with and wants to act upon to meet the goal, I guess.
Yep. Anybody else?
I forget if it was this class or another class, we talked about setting the tone at the top and bringing, like, your entire organization from that beginning, like governance foundation, prioritize and promote an organizational culture of a certain type, so that it can't just be in your like employee handbook that says we expect like an open and sharing culture. Like if your CEO does not embody that, then you've got a problem, because you need to see in leadership these values are being promoted as well.
How many organizations are comfortable with failure? Do you think failure is important to innovation?
Yeah, if you're not failing, you're not pushing the limits.
And you're not learning. So. Because fail means what?
Learning.
Learn. Which is what is fail? Does anyone remember the acronym?
Okay.
First attempt in learning.
That's awesome. I've never heard that before. I like that. Yeah, so those are key things to think about, right? I'm not going to give you all the answers today. I'm just going to pose that question and let it sit with you for a bit. Also because I'm not in the time. So back to the Volta blog. Some simple ideas that businesses are starting to use more, right? They're coming mainly from the software sector. So design, agile thinking. Anybody know what that is? So design is generally human-centered. So it's user-oriented. Agile is about thinking very fast, thinking like a startup, thinking like an entrepreneur, right? So very entrepreneurial type thinking, being constantly prototyping, trying something, learning, try again. Action learning is also very popular. So lean startup, minimum viable product. Anybody familiar with those terms? Okay, I'm going to suggest you look up all these terms. If you don't know what they are, you need to know. Flexibility, I assume you know that one. So that's flexible. That could be, you know, every Friday is Deep Think Day. Or the Friday afternoon, you go for a beer and you just talk about what you're trying to do. Change it up, right? Open communication. How important is that? Very important. The question is, how do you make sure that there's open and communication? And to have open communication, what do you need?
Safe environment.
A safe environment? What else?
You need to trust.
Trust. Thank you. Yes. How many organizations have a high level of trust and sense of safety within their organizational culture? Again, not going to give you all the answers, just posing some questions to think about. Safe environment to fail, prototyping, right? That's another key component. So these were all mentioned in the Volta blog as well. So keep calm, focus on the basics. Those are some of the basics, okay? Is this enough? So going back to the Governing Good blog, and this is a different blog, look for the bus. If you go on Governing Good and type in Governing Good bus, I think the article will come up. It's kind of long. So this is also by Grant, and this is a more recent one that came out. But so if we look at what was on the list from the business people at Volta, is that enough to be innovative within a nonprofit environment? What else do we need to think about within a nonprofit environment? What's special about a nonprofit versus a business?
Yeah, mission.
Mission, anything else?
Where your money comes from.
Yeah, anything else? Think about governance. What's special about a nonprofit organization compared to a business in terms of governance?
You're answering to a board.
Yes, thank you. Who is the board answer to?
Themselves. Nope. Stakeholders.
Anybody?
Nope.
When you do up bylaws, when you have an annual general meeting, who votes in the board?
Membership.
Membership, right? Not government, not stakeholders, members, or whoever is identified as that membership group within the bylaws of the organization, right?
For a second, do you guys remember the other day, you were doing a presentation on membership versus, right? So, remember we were talking about what membership is in last class, right? So membership, you have members at an AGM, annual general meeting, right? The members come back and vote, and they're the ones that vote in the directors who are on the board. So you're accountable at nonprofit to the public, but the people who vote you in to those positions are the members.
Yeah. So in terms of accountability within a nonprofit governance structure, there's two that are commonly talked about and that Grant talks about in this blog. And one is fiduciary responsibilities, which are what?
Basically like your legal accountabilities and responsibilities.
Yep. Yep. Don't break the law, achieve your mission, all that kind of,
Don't lose the money.
fiduciary is, yeah, don't waste money, all that kind of stuff, right? Basically. Strategic, what's that?
How do we achieve the mission? What should it be?
How do you find plans?
Yep. And I would encourage you to think and or do some research on the idea of strategic thinking versus strategic planning. Okay, because there's more of a shift. Big organizations still like to do strategic plans. Think of a business startup. If you're a business startup, you're an entrepreneur, either on your own, maybe one or two buddies. Do you do a big strategic plan? You might do a business plan if you need money from somebody, right? Because then you need to prove that your idea has merit. But generally, if you're just trying to get something going, what are you doing?
Thinking?
Strategic thinking, and usually what you're doing is you're thinking in terms of, I'll talk more about it in a minute, but there's a particular way of doing strategic thinking versus planning. Okay, so I encourage you to dive into that a bit more. Generative, what do you think generative means? Grant outlines it quite clearly in his blog. Fiduciary, the reason for the bus, I just remembered, sorry, forgot, the bus is there for a reason. Fiduciary is like you're at the back of the bus making sure everything's okay, all the ducks are in a row, T's are crossed, I's are dotted, that sort of thing. Strategic, you're at the front of the bus, right? Looking out forward, where are we going,
So
that sort of thing.
You're in the middle.
Or you're driving with us.
Strategic, you're up front. Fiduciary, you're at the back, taking care of nuts and bolts. Generative, what do you think generative is in relation to the bus?
Are you driving the bus?
Nope.
Are you in the middle of the bus?
Nope.
You
That's
getting
fine.
on
Are
the
you
bus?
on-
You waiting for
Off the
the bus?
bus?
Did you
Are
agree?
you the bus?
Yes,
Bus.
off the bus. You're getting off the bus, and what do you think you might be doing when you get off the bus?
Getting on a new bus.
That sounds like you're jumping organizations. No, you're staying with the same organization. What else could you be doing when you get off the bus?
Looking at it from another perspective or something.
Another perspective? Yeah, how would you get those other perspectives?
360
Like getting
longer.
off the bus.
Talking to people, right? Talking to people who are not the normal people that you talk to. So your stakeholders,
So-
the public at large, the people you're trying to serve. You're actually getting off the bus and you're doing some deep dive research. And I'm not just talking staff doing this, I'm talking about board members doing this. Okay, and that's what Grant's advocating for as well.
So generative means like, on the bus, you have the fiduciary ideas, so she's strategic ideas. But when you're off the bus, you're like.
You're generating new
open
ideas.
to new ideas.
Yes, thank you.
Got it.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so quick
So-
blowdown.
So we can just hold it for 1 second.
Yep.
So for those that are in the other course right now, you're going out and talking to people, right? And remember we had the conversation in the last class where it's like, well, hold on, there may be stereotypes of things going on. The answer is engaging in the conversation is better than not having the conversation at all, right? So that is, what you're doing in that project is a